So I'm going to talk really just briefly about the grid, and I'll have some more information about solar and batteries and kind of the impact of the grid on the future of solar and batteries. So really, basically, the question always is, what's the grid or how does that relate to solar? At its root, the grid is the way that utilities provide electricity to home and businesses. That's it. Basically, it's that simple. Simply it. We know it's a very large and complex structure. You look outside, you drive down the road, you see the high power lines, substations, things like that. It's a huge and complicated structure, and we know that electricity can be generated in many different ways. So we've got coal, natural gas, nuclear, wind, and even commercial and residential, because systems that overproduce actually are generating electricity that does go to the grid. And so this is all ways that we are able to get electricity from utilities and from the producers of electricity to the homeowners and to residents, is through this huge structure. Now, some of the things that people don't always understand, especially when they're considering solar, is what is a utility. Some utilities are privately owned, some are what they call co-ops, some are city owned, and some are hybrid systems. We've seen a lot. So as people start looking at solar, it's important that they understand what their utility is or how their utility handles net metering. And speaking of net metering, that's something that's handled basically by utility. It's every utility has a different process and rules and regulations on how they handle excess energy that's produced. So it's very important to understand what your utility does with excess energy and how it reimburses, if it does even reimburse. The grid allows electricity to be transported next door to your next door neighbor or whoever needs electricity down the road, or it can be transported hundreds of miles to other customers as needed. Now, we've seen over the last couple of years that utilities have really kind of been attacking solar, and a lot of utilities, and most utilities, have some type of a public regulation, meaning that there's some government oversight. But we've also seen that sometimes doesn't really mean that their utilities are solar friendly, which is why solar and batteries are very important moving forward. And then finally, the way that the utilities provide solar on the grid is through their net metering process and their net metering contracts, which means basically any excess energy goes back to the grid and is used by somebody else.